All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining. We're going to get started. Before the superintendent begins speaking, I just want to go ahead and let everyone know that we do have interpretation services available in both Chinese and Spanish. So I'm going to ask Marissa to go to our interpretation lines, perfect, and then I'm going to ask our interpreters to make an announcement in their language regarding the interpretation that's services that are available. Who wants to go first? Esther? Hey, Esther, go ahead. Thank you.
Buenos días. Si necesitan interpretación en español, por favor llamen al 347-966-4114 y marcar el número 857-927-074 asterístico para reunirse a la línea de español. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. And Wing, you ready? So Wing, I can't hear you. I see you talking, but you look unmuted, but I can't hear you. Do me a favor, unmute yourself on Teams also, see if that helps.
Hello?
Yeah, I hear you now. That's weird.
Okay.
Okay. You figured it out. Go ahead.
OK， Hello， 大家好。如果你是需要中文翻译的话，请你打347-966-4114，然后按这个电话会议的 ID 814939-952， pound 最后一个符号还是要打的。OK，All right， thanks.
Thank you very much, and I will continue to put this in the chat for those who have joined late with the interpretation line information. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Superintendent DiMango to begin our meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Louis and Esther and Wing, for helping me to connect and as always, continue supporting us to continue to reach our communities in so many ways. I'm very excited to see we have so many participants today. I do think that this is my most attended listening and learning tour. Yes, Louis?
I think we hit. I think last time we had Zoom at night, we hit like 80 people, but we'll get there.
All right, we will get there. We will get there. So, so this is an opportunity for the community to connect with me. I'm going to do a brief presentation around who we are as a district and our district focus this year, and how that connects to you as families as well as to your students in building deeper relationships with your school communities. And then I'm going to ask 3 guiding questions, and I will open up the chat and mic for anyone who wants to ask me a question about anything that, any question or concern that they may have. I want to thank those of you who did give your questions in advance. We do have some support people on this call that I will be introducing you to that can assist you in some of the questions that were presented to us earlier, but we're here to answer any questions that families or community members would have. The first thing that I want to introduce our community to is there's many ways that you can reach out and connect to the district office. And we want everyone to be aware that we are available 24/7. However, we do have a 24-hour notification window. We promise that someone will respond to you within that time frame. But you can always call, text, or leave a voicemail for us at 347-850-3048. You can email us anytime at contact@d25.nyc. You can visit our website where we have a lot of information about meeting dates and just our focus areas and other things that are going on across the district. And you can also send a message through this website at www.d25.nyc/contact. Or you can always message us on our many social media outlets, which on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Okay, next slide. So many of you have seen this before. One of the things that I am most proud of is that we have formulated and we live our vision of strong roots, strong schools every day. Embedded in this vision statement is our beliefs and values as the district as a whole and individual communities. What I love so much about this work is that we created it together in conjunction with the district office, school administrators, teachers, families, and students. And it really represents who we are in many levels. So when we talk about from many roots growing together, you see the roots of our tree are all of our schools. Each of our schools is individual, and there is high level rigorous expectations for staff and students. But we as a community of educators spend a tremendous amount of time capturing the good work that happens across our schools and making sure that that work is seen, modeled, and shared with one another. It also represents our expectation of valuing the communities that we serve, their cultures, their beliefs, their structures, and that we represent and support and value all of the diversity that is represented in District 25. We all come from and should learn from one another from our many roots, and together that makes us smarter as a community and more supportive to one another. We believe in empowering our learners, giving them access to rigorous instructional tasks, as well as rigorous curriculum and teaching practices, and allowing them opportunities to make the choices that they make to help them grow as learners and leaders. In our work, we also focus on embracing differences for all of our students and providing equitable access and opportunities for all. And I will talk about some of that today. Next slide, Marissa. You can skip over the mission statement. It's really what I talked about. Okay, so one of the things I think is really important for our communities to know is that across the summer, and especially in the beginning of the school year, my focus for our leaders is that we come back strong, and that part of that work is making sure that our students and families feel welcome. Our schools did an amazing job in ensuring that our students were not only ready, but welcomed and that it was known how much they were missed. We are so excited, so invigorated. Dr. D'Antona and I have started visiting schools on a daily basis. We're going to make sure that by the end of October, we do one-on-ones with all of our principals before we start our yearly assessment school visits. But I can tell you that every school, every principal and teachers are just so excited that we are emerging from the pandemic and that they are ready to get to work and to get back to the things that our students loved. We successfully opened our doors for all of our schools at the start of the school year. And as always, District 25 is a place where people from across the country, across the world, and across the city specifically always want to come and see the amazing work that's happening in our schools. So we were fortunate to have visits for the first 2 weeks of school from our chancellor, from 2 of our deputy chancellors, and our comptroller to spend some time with students and staff. Next slide. I'm also really excited as your superintendent. I know that many of you have heard the chancellor talk about the expansion of the district office and the supports that we have in District 25 that will go directly to our schools and our families. So I wanted to spend some time going through our new team. Not only will you see as I explain them the pictures and a little blurb about what each person does, and this is available on our district website, but it also has emails of contacts, and you are free as a community to email any of our staff members directly for any supports that you need. So as you know, I am your community superintendent. I'm very proud and honored to be back. I work with and alongside Dr. Michael D'Antona, our deputy superintendent. Together, we support the district level goals of the school to improve teaching and learning and promote student success. Dr. D'Antona is really in charge of all of our professional learning of our leaders, assistant principals, and monitors the work that our support staff does for guidance counselors, parent coordinators, And as Lewis wrote, he puts the awesome in Team Awesome. Beverly Mitchell is our new Executive Director of School Supports and Operations. She works in support with student services and facilities, as well as community affairs. And she also works with me directly to supervise our district leadership pipeline. Louis Latito, who many of you know, he is our field support liaison. He is really the resource and the connections to both central and community to our principals. And he maintains the district website and social media accounts and other public resources. We have 4 instructional leads that provide direct supports for our schools in terms of teaching and learning. We have Debbie Winkler, who is our teacher development and evaluation coach, Anna Arrigo, Angelique Hewitt, and Melinda Willens, who are all instructional leads who target different areas of literacy for our schools. Next slide. We have Michelle Lee, our multilingual learner services administrator. She is the newest member of our district team. She provides help and support for our school leaders and English language learner coordinators on not only understanding and implementing mandates, but is working with us to support our bilingual programs, such as our dual language and transitional bilingual programs, and in supporting our vision that if you teach in District 25, you are a teacher of language. So supporting all teachers in supporting our language learning across the district. So welcome, Michelle. We also have Arifa Khan and Danielle Bergman. They are our early childhood academic intervention service coordinators. They specialize in early childhood Tier 1 and Tier 2 support groups across the district, and they are each working with different schools across our community. We also have Diana Stein, who was our instructional lead in terms of health and wellness and physical education. And now more than ever, we are excited that Diana will be working with our schools as we emerge from this pandemic to make sure that our students stay both physically and emotionally well and healthy. Okay, we have Tracy Vaughn, who is our academic policy, performance, and assessment supports. She works with schools in understanding city and state academic policies. Many of our parents may have questions about academic policy, grade changes, report cards. Tracy also ensures that all of our schools have all of their students scheduled properly in terms of state mandates. And that also includes our multilingual learners as well as our IEP students. Nathan Yakubov is our administrator of special education. Nathan is very popular with all of us today, as well as our community members. He supports schools and families with special education related questions and issues. One of the things that we do say to our families that it's very important that you continue to have open lines of communication with your schools at all times in terms of making sure that your child's IEP is being implemented properly. But if there are questions and concerns that cannot be answered at the school level for families, Nathan is our support who you can reach out to directly. We then have Richard Braun. He is our L compliance and performance specialist. He will actually be presenting at our CEC meeting in November because one of the things that we are really promoting and want to get out to our communities is our focus on languages and multilingual language resources that we have for all of our families, which include dual language for English speaking and non-English speaking families, as well as our transitional bilingual and ENL programs. We want to make sure that our families are aware that across our schools, we have multiple language programs so that you can make the best decision for your child's learning needs as a multilingual learner. We also have another new member who started last week, and that's Greg Yankovich. He is our student service manager. He supports attendance, crisis and de-escalation, culture and climate, and guidance across our district. So we welcome Greg as well. I am so excited about this big team. Here we go. More. Wing, who is translating today, she is our school district social worker. She is providing and building capacity and support for our school practitioners in a wide range of social, emotional, and mental health and wellness supports. And she also works to make connections with families and resources that are available across our community. So she is a resource for families as well, and they can feel free to reach out to her around crisis intervention or intervention programs that are available for high need or at-risk students and families. Esther Maludo, who is also translating from California today, and we thank Esther for doing that. She is the main point of contact for our parent coordinators, our families, and community members who may have questions and concerns. She is also the support for our family leaders in working with our President's Council as well as our CECs around PTA functions and overall compliance in those areas. Then we have Marissa Martin, who is our community coordinator. She's the main point of contact for outreach and communication with local community members, businesses, as well as our local elected officials. And Janet Ayala Capo is my administrative assistant. She is the person that you will get. She answers the phone when you call the district office. Okay, so you are on my listening and learning tour, which began last month, and our 90-day plan, and I want to welcome all of you here today. For those of you who want to see my former plans, you can go to, go back, Marissa, just really quick, www.d25.nyc/events, and you will get all of the information to where I was and where I will be in the future. Next slide. So my 90-day plan is also available on the website. And I think I'm not going to go through each detail of the plan because I do want to give the community time to ask questions, but it is available at d25.nyc/90-day plan. It talks about our areas of focus and value, what we are doing the first 3 months and beyond that are aligned to our Strong Roots, Strong Schools vision. It focuses on our continuation of supporting and providing access to excellence around our beliefs of equity and diversity across all our schools and ensuring that our students have access to all of the tools that they need to be their best selves and to continue to grow and learn both academically and social emotionally. Our focus on wellness and safety and the ways that we work to continue to empower learners, especially now that our schools and classrooms are opened up in ways prior to the pandemic and the things that we have learned during the pandemic to ensure that our students have a voice and say in what they're learning in order to deepen their knowledge. Next slide. This is actually just shows you the map of where I will be across the districts until the end of November. Next slide. October, sorry. And this was one of the things that we talked about in the ways that we can continue to address the learning losses that have occurred because of the pandemic is through an expectation for all of our schools to start off strong, which is aligned to our Strong Roots, Strong Schools vision and the training that we've had for our school leaders prior to and during the pandemic. And in turn, the school leaders supported their teachers in this work. One of the things that we believe in is that it's important to know our students and our schools well through the strategic review of data, both state assessment data, our citywide assessment data, such as iReady, beginning of the year, middle year, and end of year, that really talks about where our students have grown from the beginning to the end of the year. In terms of looking at student work, student surveys, parent surveys, how well do we know the needs of our school? That is a conversation that I have with each and every leader across our district, as well as Dr. D'Antona, and we ask them to do an assessment of what works well, what are some of the highlights that schools should be proud of in the work that they do with teachers, with students, and with families? And what are some of the things that we need to target? The next focus is targeting our areas of need. What are some areas that each of our individual schools need to grow in? And in a few moments, I will talk to you about what we need to grow in as a whole as a district that you will hear your school leaders and teachers talking about across the year, about researching possible solutions to some of the areas that we need to do better in, and then to organize and communicate professional learning opportunities for our staff, and then provide time for implementation, assessment, and feedback to teachers and students, and to gather feedback around this work across the year so we can monitor the progress and make adjustments if necessary. So all of our schools are following this model of starting off strong. Any parent member or community member can, if you are in schools, at your PTA meetings or meeting with your teachers or your parent coordinator, really talk about how your school engages in this process and the decisions that they made to focus on certain areas to correct some of the learning losses and allow our students to continue to grow as learners and as leaders across the district. So this is a visual of the areas that we are asking schools to target through an analysis of our data, and you will see for our district-wide data that the focus should be on reading at many levels. Go back. Who we are as readers from grades K to 8 looks very differently, but it's really about understanding where our students are in their reading levels and in us being able to target both individual student needs, but also establishing a culture where reading is valued. Last year, and we will continue the work this year on our equity visits, where we take an overall look at our targeted focus of reading, and we look at certain subgroups of students that are performing farthest from success, and we provide them access and supports through MTSS, as well as culturally responsive and sustaining education. All right, next slide. So what this slide really talks about is our areas of focused and district-based supports that we will be providing to our schools in reading across grades K through 8. So we, in terms of grades actually pre-K to 3, we're talking about building foundational reading skills and what it means to really learn to read. Many of you have, who have made connections with your school already know that most of our schools are using the Foundations program. And this year they will be weaving in Heggerty, which actually supports some of the gaps that existed in Foundations around phonics and phonemic awareness. So together, most of our schools will be engaging in Foundations. Also, 350 of our early childhood teachers will be engaged in letters training, which is a training on reading in the brain and actually what happens to students' minds as they are processing the early phases of reading, the early foundation skills of reading, ways teachers can recognize that through sight and sound, and supports corrections and accelerations they can make as students are learning to read. We will also continue to provide our systems and structures for MTSS in the different tiered levels. Tier 1 is supporting students who may be struggling and needing additional support in the classroom, and our Tier 2 and Tier 3 MTSS supports occur outside the classroom. One of the things that we spend a lot of time asking parents to recognize and communicate with their schools should they need is asking the question of what are the MTSS supports that you offer to students across the school in the areas of reading, as we're focused on today, but also in math. MTSS supports are pre-special education supports that that schools engage in that help to correct learning loss or gaps in learning that occur across the years. We always say to families that any parent has the option at any time to ask for a special education evaluation, but MTSS supports are other options that all schools have available to support learners who may be struggling in certain areas. In our grades 3 to 5, We will continue to build some of the learning losses in the early foundation skills that some of our K-3 students have experienced because of the pandemic. And then we are also going to tend to our accelerated readers to continue to foster the upper level foundation reading skills of comprehension, decoding, and fluency. We will continue to support through systems and structures for MTSS, and 9 of our schools are participating in the District Clavis L pilot in grades 4 and 5, which also address and tend to rich and engaging text and upper elementary level reading supports as well. Our district focus in grades 6 through 8 focus on reading to learn, and all of our middle schools will be working with reading specialists and supports around close reading of complex and compelling texts across many of our content areas, not only in ELA, and the focus will be supporting our students in nonfiction. Next slide. All of our work is embedded and aligned to the Chancellor's 4 pillars and big goals of reimagining the student experience, in scaling and sustaining what works, in prioritizing wellness and its impact on student success, and in partnering with parents. Next slide. One of the activities that we engaged in with all of our schools is we went over the Chancellor's 4 pillars that many of you have heard him speak about prior to the beginning of the school year. All of our schools together unpacked what were the expectations within these pillars, what did we hear from the Chancellor. Then we looked at some of the things that we are currently doing together as communities as a whole, as a district, but also our individual schools. Go back. And what else we can do to deepen our roots. Once again, to our families, this is a question that you should really be speaking to each of your individual schools about and asking, how are you tending to and addressing the expectations within the Chancellor's 4 pillars? And both your teachers, school leaders, and parent coordinators should be able to give you specific details of the work that they're doing in this area. Next slide. Before I open up today to all of our families for questions, I do want to remind all of you the importance of opening your New York City Schools account, your NYSCA account. Every day, the city is really working to make this place a one-stop shop where families can log in and get all of the information that they need. And it is a parent-facing space for you to look up individual things for your children, but to also give you supports as families on some of the citywide tools that they have that parents are using to further support their students' learning. So on this portal, you can see your students' grade, test scores, and more. There will be classes through Parent University. You can report bullying, access form for your child, reset your child's DOE account password. I know you used to have to do that through your parent coordinator. You can do that right in your school's NYSCA account and access the support hub. Okay, next slide. So these are the 3 guiding questions that I have put out to all communities during my listening and learning tour. You are happy to touch upon any of these during the meeting, but I know that each of you also have individual questions that I am happy to answer. If you do not want to unmute yourself and speak today or share your feedback in the chat during the meeting, you can also email us at events@d25.nyc or online at www.d25.nyc/feedback. So you can just forward through the next slides. Yeah, we don't have to go through each individual one. So these are areas that you can think about if you don't have your own individual question, or you can ask your own individual question. So at this time, Louis, I didn't know if there are any questions in the chat.
Yeah, nothing in the chat. So yeah, if you have a question, you can put it in the chat. If you'd like to ask your question just raise your hand on Zoom and we can unmute you and you can ask your question to the superintendent. And then I'll also ask our interpreters, Esther and Wing, if there are any questions in their different interpretation rooms, they can go ahead and get those questions ready as well. So does anyone have a question for the superintendent? You can go ahead and raise your hand or you can drop it in the chat.
I have nothing on the Spanish line, no questions.
Thank you, Esther. So one question was in the chat, will the slides be shared via email? Sure, I can send an email to everyone who registered, who RSVP'd with the slides, but you can also get the slides right now. If you go to the event website, d25.nyc/event, there's a button that says shared documents, I believe, yep. And if you click on that button, it opens up a Google folder and you'll see the slides there, but I can send them as email as well, no problem.
And if you're having a hard time, if you can't unmute yourself, because Lewis has to unmute you and you can't raise your hand, you can also ask to be unmuted in the chat. So,
Oh, good.
Yep,
Yeah.
good question. MTSS is a multi-tiered system of support that addresses each individual child's academic and social emotional learning. MTSS at schools are provided in 3 different tiers. And one of the things that we talk about is an expectation and why an analysis of data is very important to happen right at the beginning of the school year, is that we, as a district, understand the needs of our schools and know our schools well, but in turn that our principals and teachers know their students well. So many of our principals do engage in data chats with teachers around the best way to ensure that our students have access, who are struggling, have access to the curriculum. So when we talk about Tier 1 MTSS, that is supports that are delivered in the classroom by the classroom teacher. And because the expectation is we know our students well, when we are addressing a particular topic, we should know which of our students are need support in that area and make sure that we're providing tools to help them access that. MTSS additionally is inclusive of acceleration as well, and it's to understand the needs of those children and to make sure that they have access to acceleration within the classroom. Tier 2 and Tier 3 are outside programs. Tier 2 is a cycle of learning, but it is an additional what we call intervention or RTI program for a shorter period of time that students receive that will help them to correct some of the learning lags that they may have. And Tier 3 is a longer extended program that happens more often and longer across the year to also help correct some of the learning loss or the learning concerns that students may have. Okay.
So we have a question in the chat from Raquel. I'm sorry if you see it, Danielle, regarding math levels from the, I guess, the state tests.
Yep.
And how
So
we're supporting students with that.
Yep. So Raquel, thank you for that. Over the past 5 years, prior to and throughout the pandemic, our targeted area of support in pre-K to 8 has been in focusing on math. So we've done some intensive work with Bank Street in training many of our teachers in early childhood math instruction and ways to create tasks and activities within the classroom that help build students' capacity in understanding math concepts. In terms of our upper grade and our upper level work, that was really done in training our teachers in higher level, upper elementary math skills using Algebra for All, as well as in middle school. We did and asked our math departments to do a close look at our math curriculum around rigor of tasks in our work with Apple, as well as expanding access to many of our families and students by offering access points in order for our students to take higher level math coursework. Those expectations are not going away. We are asking all of our schools that although they are tending to reading, because reading is an area that seems to need our focus in many areas, that the work and the learning that has occurred over the past 5 years in supporting our learners with math does not go away.
Thank you. So we have a couple of questions regarding enrollment.
Okay.
One is around grades being a factor in placement for middle school and high school, and how are we supporting schools and families to research academic goals to gain admission to these schools?
So a really important thing that many of our communities have asked within the 12 years of me being a superintendent is for our schools to have consistency in our grading practices. That is something that we have done together as a school community, and our teachers are aware that students should be graded towards the standards. That's the state expectation, and that is our expectation. And that is really what parents should have an understanding from their teachers and schools around what are the things that they're looking towards in terms of students meeting the standards within each individual unit of study. Schools and teachers should be communicating with families about the learning that's happening over those short periods of time within each academic grading window. And so it is really about making sure that students have the support to have access to and meet those standards. So, so any type of academic goal setting is really something that each of our schools should be able to talk to the parent community about.
Okay, thank you. Someone also asked around middle school open houses. So I know that our middle schools contact our elementary schools and share open house information, which will be distributed through parent coordinators. But I'm also going to put in the chat the Department of Education's public webpage on middle school admissions, and there will be a calendar that will have open house information for middle schools on that page as well. So definitely check the public DOE website. And again, middle schools typically contact elementary schools with flyers for their open houses. And you're also free to contact any middle school that you're interested in applying to regarding their open house as well. But thank you for that question, because I know middle school applications will be coming out soon.
Yep.
Okay. So someone direct messaged me this question. Will zoning be included in high school admissions this year? And I think
one of the important things to know is there are a small select group of schools in District 25 of high schools that still honor zoning, and it is my understanding that that will still be part of the high school application process. But it's also important for families to know that most high schools across New York City are not zoned, their application.
Thank you. Someone also was just sharing their concern around a child with an IEP that is struggling in math, and about additional supports for children who struggle with math.
Yep. So the one thing that I think is important for parents to know, and Nathan, if I'm not saying something, just you could always feel free to chime in, but it's really about what are the goals of within your child's IEP around math, and are they targeting the right things? And that's why we say it's really important for parents and the teams at a school to work together to make sure that the IEP goals for each individual child are specific enough that they are really targeting that child's deficit. If a parent feels that that needs to be looked at again, You do not have to wait for your annual review to do that. You can ask to reconvene to say that I'm concerned in this particular case about my child's math goal, and I want to make sure that that we are addressing it in the right way to make sure that he's making progress in the areas that we're targeting on his IEP. And the same thing, I see that are these programs included in my child's IEP? Many of the RTI and MTS programs are addressed within a student's, as part of ways to support a student's IEP goals. They're not limited to MTSS. So if we're doing, let's just say, to support a particular area, there's a program called Spire or Great Leaps or other types of RTI programs, and each school offers different layers of programs. That is something that you can speak to your child's teacher about to make sure if their child's goal focuses in a specific area that one of the programs that the school is offering can target, that they be part of that program as well.
Thank you. So Rachel asks, what do you see as other top goals of the district to address this year? In addition to making up academic defects due to the pandemic. So what else are we looking to?
So thank you, Rachel, for that question. So as many of you know, since 2014, I have really been passionate about social emotional learning. All of our principals, assistant principals, many of our teachers have been trained in Ruler, in our relationship that we formulated with the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. But it doesn't just stop with Ruler. It is also about what are the SEL programs that each individual school has that supports students' social emotional growth. And I think that as we're emerging from the pandemic, now more than ever, we need to reconnect with those programs and make sure, and our vision of social emotional learning, and ensure that our families know about them as well. We have a lot of schools that are participating in yoga and mindfulness, that have calming rooms, that are embedding many of the competencies that we talk about in DESA, such as what do students do when they get frustrated? How can they reconnect themselves when they don't understand something? Are the supports in place? So we're continuing that work too, because I do know that there is a tremendous amount of anxiety and stress for not just children, but for adults as well. And we're making sure that adults in our school are attending to these programs as well, in terms to make sure that our social and emotional health is in a space that it needs to be, so we can continue to support learning. Additionally, I know that our focus is in reading, but I want to thank all of you for reminding me to make sure that our building leaders and teachers do know that math is something that needs to be addressed and tended to as well, and that there are clear MTSS supports for students who are struggling in math.
Thank you. iPhone just wants to tell you that you're doing a great job and keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you.
A question from Princess. Hi, Princess. Regarding Hi, Princess. Regarding it sounds like kids getting help like with homework or with schoolwork after school while they're at home. What is there in place to help children while they're when they're not in school?
So many of our schools and our teachers are setting up Google Classroom and resources for students to tend to when they are at home. But one of the things that I always recommend is Dial a Teacher. I don't know how many of you know that. It is a after school support that is run by our UFT, where teachers are available for, I do believe it's until like 7, 8 o'clock at night, to help students with their homework. Louis, if you could put that in the chat so parents have access to that. They'll ask you your grade level and your school, but there are many teachers on there that do have knowledge of the curriculum that we are using in District 25, and they may be able to support students with some of the struggles that they have at home while they're engaging in either makeup work or their homework.
It's Monday,
Oh,
yeah, Monday through
Monday through
Thursday,
Thursday, 4 to 7.
4
Thank
to
you.
7, yeah, which is cool. All right, I put their website and their phone number in the chat, but that's a great question, Princess. Thank you.
Yep, and it's offered in multiple languages too.
Oh, thank you. And someone else put it in, someone sent it to me.
So CS, who has additional questions?
Yes, CS, you can unmute yourself if you want to talk. I gave you the ability to unmute yourself if you want to ask your questions out loud.
Thank you. Hi, how are you? My name's Catherine.
Hey,
Hi,
Catherine.
Catherine.
Hi. I just want to say I really do appreciate the attention and the passion that you have for the social emotional health of our kids. And I don't know if you remember me, but I was at the last in-person meeting that you had at Bell Academy, and I asked about possibly extending recess during the school day in order specifically to address the social emotional needs of our kids. And so something that I and a group of parents at my school are curious about implementing is possibly reworking the Bell schedule in our school. Is that schedule something that can be readjusted in order to incorporate a longer period of socialization time for our kids? Is that your decision? Is that the principal's decision? And what then would be like the parameters for going about that?
So that is a school-based decision just around how the schedule works out throughout the day. What I do know is that there's two things. There's state guidelines for the amount of time that students have to spend learning, and then there's also contractual times for teachers to teach. Those have to be taken into consideration, but anything else is really a discussion about the way the program has been structured. So you couldn't extend, let's just say, recess time where you were taking away from learning time, or that not everyone at the school would have equal amount of time where they're tending to a class. So that has to be part of the discussion, but after that, anything else would be a school-based decision.
So is that something that could be adjusted at this point in the year if we work closely with our principal as
well, I will say to you from my experience, any sort of program restructuring at this time, once school start, does have an impact on a lot of things. So I'm not saying that that you can't discuss it at the school level, but I can say that there's other things that can be carved out that don't necessarily just tend to, let's just say, recess, right? It could be what other times throughout the day can we create to allow students to engage in the socialization that you're talking about without having to reprogram. So I think it's a larger question that I definitely encourage you to have, because I agree with you. I don't think, I remember you from Bell Academy. I don't think a child should have to rush to eat so they can go outside and spend time with their peers. So I encourage the conversation. I also had a conversation with the principal of the building, just to really say that I think there is a need that the school to kind of open this up and engage in a discussion. So I encourage you to do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great question. Thank you, Catherine. So I got another message directly to me regarding math, but this is for students who have not fallen behind in math. I'm guessing it's more talk about acceleration in math. What is there anything can be done for children to challenge them in math class, especially for students in middle school who may be preparing for the Shazat exam?
So that is something that I would reach out to your child's guidance counselor. Many of our middle schools do offer after school Shazat preparation programs. So please reach out to your school to see if they have those available. As I said, most of them do. So just make sure that it's being communicated and that you're getting the information that you need in order to properly sign your child up for those programs.
And the superintendent spoke earlier around our acceleration in middle school for high school courses. So I think that applies for that as
Mhm.
well. Students can take accelerated courses that terminate in a Regents exam if they are excelling in mathematics. Okay. Someone asked a question around students applying for 10th grade seats. Will those admissions also screen on attendance? I don't know around. I don't know. Danielle, do you know anything about?
I don't think attendance is part
Yeah.
of what they're looking at for screens. It is 7th grade grades.
And this is actually
currently.
not even a child entering in 9th grade. This is when they can kind of apply to enter get a 10th
Oh,
grade
for 10th
seat.
grade. You know what? I
Contact,
don't know.
the family,
Yeah, contact
yeah.
the school
Yeah, or the best way to get questions
or the
around
family
enrollment.
and welcome center.
Yeah, the Family Welcome
Yeah.
Center would be the best place to contact you. I put in the chat the info on the high school applications as well. Same thing. Once open houses for high schools are made available, they'll put them on that website, so you'll see all the calendar for that. I got another question message directed to me regarding the vaccine requirement in schools for adults. So will the mayor be making changes based on updated guidance from Fdncc?
Yeah, so we have not heard any of that, but I have escalated because many of our parents have spoken about the vaccine mandate. As of right now, it is still a requirement for adults entering the building.
And if we get updates on that, of course, everyone.
Yep,
will be
we'll let you
notified. Many
Mhm.
different ways. Rachel loves the emphasis on SEL. Thank you, Rachel. Princess also says hi back to us. Hi, Princess. And I'm really behind in the chat. I'm sorry, guys. So Rachel also asks, are we developing any district-wide school safety protocols based on discussions about such as locking doors, school safety officers from last year? As I recall, our principal was saying that she's waiting to see if there would be new guidance from the district in the new school year, but I might be misremembering.
So Rachel, one of the things that I wanted to let you know is today, actually, we have a safety meeting with the mayor and parent leaders from across the district, as well as principals across the district, to talk about just that. I do know that our CEC, one of the representatives will be our CEC president, as well as our president's council president, and they are very aware of the concerns that the community has voiced around thinking about different ways to embed some of the protocols that families are asking citywide. When it comes to safety protocols, they are not done at the district level, they are done citywide. And we know that safety protocols and systems and practices are evolving as we speak. One of the things that has happened this summer is that all of our principals have had to engage in emergency preparedness training, in strengthening some of the practices that are happening across schools in terms of emergencies, in working with our building response teams to ensure that everyone has an understanding of the safety and emergency protocols that are happening, in focusing on our lockdown or our shelter-in drills. We've had to do a couple of them for things that have occurred outside of some of our schools. So we are making sure that as any type of new school safety protocols are announced, that our school leaders as well as staff are aware of them and they're implementing them right away. So I do know that today, parent leaders and principals tend to talk about some of the things that you have mentioned in terms of locking doors and school safety officers as well.
Thank you very much. Someone's asking about homework help for a kindergarten child. I can share the dial-a teacher information again, but I believe they support those the grade K. the new policy. Someone is just sharing the new policy regarding screen schools. When will I know my child's group for high school admission? So when they admit students into a high school based on these groups.
No, that she's talking about for the
Yeah.
screen school. If your child, well, actually, I don't want to speak to high school. We'll
Yeah.
get that information, but I think what Lewis put up on there in terms of high school applications, and your child's guidance counselor, I think it's important that you stay in contact with them.
And I'll put the high school application webpage again. They post everything on there. And if your child's group is shared with you, they'll let you know on that webpage, like how that's done. All right, so there are no more questions in the chat right now. Does anyone want to unmute themselves? You can go ahead and.
And what about some of the questions that people entered in advance? I want to make sure all those were answered.
Oh, sure.
I think a lot of them were addressed already, but just in
Yeah.
case.
Okay. So thank you, Marissa. So Marissa put the Dialog Teacher website and phone number in the chat. So will there be G&T program at PS 107? And how are you addressing G&T students who do not meet the requirement of true G&T but are sitting in those classes? I guess, how are you supporting students that are not in G&T programs with enrichment, I guess?
So one of the things that I think is important for families across the district to understand is that District 25, in terms of our elementary school programs, our G&T programs, are above average for citywide programs. We have more programs than District 26 in terms of G&T. So we don't necessarily get to decide around opening additional G&T. That is done at the citywide level, but at this time, that one of the things that I do not believe that they will allow us to open any other additional G&T programs, because we have so many more than other districts across the city. The other piece is that our schools, like Lewis had said earlier, when we talk about MTSS, it does include acceleration. When we talk about giftedness across a wide range, there's a lot of different aspects of a child that makes them talented in other areas than another. I don't necessarily know. I can't really speak to the second layer of the question because I'm not sure where, I mean, I don't know if you wanted to elaborate on students who are not supposed to be in the gifted class. So the recommendations that were made were recommended by teachers who were using a common-based rubric to look for giftedness. So I'm not sure who would, if we would say who would belong in those programs in comparison to someone who didn't. You're muted, I think.
So Charlie, I want to ask Esther and Wing, are there any questions we have a few minutes left.
Spanish line has no questions at this time.
Thanks, Esther.
Thank you. Wing, I can see you. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay. Thumbs down. Thank you.
Okay.
So we have one question that was submitted earlier from Charlie. How can information on special education programs be delivered to parents other than email? And I asked Charlie, you tell us, how else can we get in touch with you guys?
Well, one of the things that we did that I'm really proud of, and it was actually in working with our CEC, was that they've added into their bylaws that within their first 3 meetings would be presentations for our community around supporting families in understanding the special education process and the programs that are offered across the district. So that is recorded online. It is on both our DOE website and our CEC website. And then we also have Nathan, who has done a great job right off the bat. He's created a PowerPoint for all of our families. He went to and accompanied me to the Flushing Library for an event where parents were that attended had an opportunity to learn about the different special education supports that are out there and the referral process as well. He also did the same presentation at our CEC meeting last month, and that is available on our DOE website as well as the CEC website. But if there are other ways that families would want information, please feel free to reach out to us, and we will make sure that any way that you want to be communicated with, we can accommodate.
Great. So we are pretty much out of time. There's one more question that was submitted that we can talk about. And it's just someone submitted a question prior, just expressing frustration around children with IEPs and unreliable bus service. If you just want to, talk a little bit about transportation.
So I will set for families that are struggling, and I know that many of you say that your schools are supporting you, please reach out to our office, to Lewis and Nathan. Although we don't manage busing, that's done by the Office of Pupil Transportation, we are another layer and voice to support you in making sure that that there are not any glitches in communication, and that we have a clear understanding as to why busing for your individual child looks the way it does. We've been able to make some corrections to busing, so please feel free to reach out to us at any time. Okay,
So I think that's it. Yeah, so someone also in the chat just expressed, even for children without IEPs, getting through to OPT is difficult, and we agree. Especially this time of year, lots of people are calling them.
Yep. So I see Miss Alvarez talks about Pupilpath. So Miss Alvarez, Pupilpath is not a system that the DOE uses any longer. So I know that the new platform is rolling out. But one of the things that we've spoken to our principals about is to make sure, although there's not a system such as Pupilpath, are there other ways that families can have up-to-date information on their student progress? So I would call your school's parent coordinator or their individual teacher to see if they have other ways that they can communicate with you. The other thing that I think is really important for parents to know, and it is a time that is really underutilized, is that every week teachers have mandated parent engagement time. Please make sure that your school has communicated to you when that time is, and that is a time where you can communicate either via email or phone or Teams with your child's teacher, or if you wanted to come in and meet with them, you can do that. And that could be a time while they're designing this program that you can make sure you're connecting with your child's teacher about your child's progress.
Okay.
All right.
So we are out of time. Marissa just put on the screen the different ways you can contact the district office. You can contact us at any time, like Danielle said earlier. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Yep, I want to thank everyone for being here with us today. And we did hit 90, so I think this is the most attended.
It is, yes. And that's that tells us a lot too, that we can have events during the day and that parents will come, which is great.
Yep. Thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.